Welcome to Focus Gaming News. We're very pleased to have back with us once again Paul Newson, Principal at Senet Advisory, and of course also an IAGR patron. Paul, thanks for joining us again. How are you?
Thanks, Joseph. Look, great to be here and great to be speaking with you.
It's well, thanks for joining us from all the way over the other side of the world again in Australia. How are things there at the moment? Have you had a good summer?
Yeah, look. I think everyone's struggled with COVID and all the sort of public health restrictions that attend to that. But Sydney's bursting back to life. We're not back to normality yet, but cafes and restaurants are starting to buzz, and people want to get on. People are eager to get back to their lives.
Yeah, still causing disruption, isn't it? On the casino front in Australia, there's still COVID, of course, still having an impact, but I think starting to get a little bit sort of back closer to normal.
Yeah, we're not back to normal yet, but we are getting there, even if it's only incrementally. And different states in Australia are more or less advanced, or more restrictive or less restrictive. I guess, like in many places, but. People are eager. People are champing at the bit to get back to their lives, and hopefully the remaining restrictions will fall away shortly. We were very excited to hear that the Australia's international border restrictions are ending on 21 February. So that ends nearly 2 years of a "don't come here" sign to Australia. So look, we're thrilled, and the timing for us is tremendous as well, because the course is starting in early March.
Yeah, absolutely. It's perfect timing, and of course a big moment, like you say, after 2 years with no international travel in and out. Of course, as you say, the course Regulating the Game, a 5-day educational program, is just around the corner in March. Perhaps you could tell us, well, first a little bit about the history of the project, just to fill people in who maybe aren't familiar with what it involves and where it's come from.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I've got to tip the hat to Bo Bernhard at UNLV in Nevada, because part of the inspiration for this program was my attendance at the Executive Development Program, which is run by the International Gaming Institute. And Bo's been a leader in that space for some many years. So that program's an intensive 10-day course, and it's really for industry. But I attended as a regulator in 2018, and it really excited me about what the possibility is, and the sort of training and education we could bring to Australia, because you just cannot access this sort of content, these experts, and bringing it all together under one roof. You just can't access it. The closest thing you can get to it would be going to Nevada and doing this 10-day intensive course with Bo and his team. So look, that was an initial sort of spark, an initial thinking, but then it was really just understanding the regulatory landscape in Australia, but even globally. Look, there really are too few people that have a sophisticated understanding of regulatory policy and practice, particularly in the gambling space. There's just too few. And there's even fewer that underpin that with sufficient experience and diverse experience. And by diverse experience, I also mean understanding industry, because it's no good just being a bureaucrat for 20 years without a sufficient understanding of industry and how it operates, needs, challenges. Because if you don't have that, you really risk having this binary, unsophisticated, blunt approach that it can almost incline towards an anti-industry posture, which is not your role. But similarly, without beating up on the regulators, there's too few in industry that have that same appreciation for the regulatory craft. There's too few in industry that understand public policy pressures and the intersection between public policy and politics, and understanding how regulators work through public policy development, and then their regulatory approach, what informs it, the risk assessments and the intelligence behind it. So look, weave all of that together, And we think that there is an enormous gap in the market and an enormous need to bolster both the understanding and sophistication of the regulatory craft and industry's understanding and engagement with it. Because we are really excited about the prospect of having industry and regulators more in the conversation. They should be at the table, they should be having an open dialogue, and they should be exchanging ideas to help inform the best public policy that we can to get the optimal settings that we can within the constraints and trade-offs that is just the reality of regulatory policy and practice.
Do you think that both sides are getting better at that? Do you think in terms of developments we've seen in the UK, the government looking to develop a single customer view for gaming operators and inviting gaming operators to be involved in developing what that platform might look like? Do you think that's a positive development?
Look, I think it's tremendously positive and it's courageous, because as a regulator, as a senior bureaucrat, when you are publicly engaging with industry in the gambling sector anyway, you are exposed to often severe criticism, which is unfounded, it is unfair, and it is unhelpful. Because if you as a regulator or a senior public sector leader don't understand the industry that you are regulating, at best you're going to be clumsy, at worst you're going to be clumsy and have adverse impacts both on the social but also the economic side for the state and also industry. So it is a very positive move, and it takes courage, it takes fortitude, and I applaud the UK government and the Gambling Commission for that consultation. There must be robust consultation. It doesn't mean you have to onboard everything you hear, nothing like it, but you have to hear it. And you have to make judicious judgments about the merits, measured judgments that should then inform your public policy and your regulatory approach. This nonsense about not having industry at the table as a part of the conversation does not inform good policy.
We saw the British Medical Journal, of course, criticising the Gambling Commission in the UK just for that kind of involvement recently, and making a comparison with the tobacco industry, saying you wouldn't invite tobacco companies to be involved in tobacco regulation. Do you think that's maybe an unfair and an unfortunate comparison?
Look, I think it's awfully unfair and terribly unfortunate, and it's unhelpful. I think they do themselves no service. They don't increase their regard by making such sensational and skewed claims. I think it's settled science. I think it's settled science that there's no tobacco that's good for you. You can't have a little bit of smoking and that's good for you. But to make that accusation against gambling as a recreational, as an entertainment, it's just nonsensical. The majority of people enjoy recreational gambling, and they don't want an invasive, intrusive, arbitrary interference with that. So for those sort of unhelpful, skewed and sensational opinions, this is what I'm talking about. It takes courage. It takes courage and fortitude as a regulator, as a senior public sector leader, to wade into that conversation. But you must wade into that conversation, and you must help steer the public policy discourse and not resile from it. You have to be courageous, you have to consult, and you have to hear. That doesn't mean you have to give industry everything it wants, but you've got to listen and understand, and then make measured judgments about what is the preferred public policy position in this particular jurisdiction. But also, let's not be blind to the politics. Public policy intersects with the politics, and that needs that needs judicious navigation by the regulators and the bureaucrats.
Well, going back to regulating the game and to the program for the 5 days, there's a mix of in-person and interactive remote lectures as well. Perhaps tell us a little bit about the program and what attendees can expect.
Look, without being a broken record, you just cannot access this course, this content anywhere. This is not a conference. This is an immersive course where attendees are immersed in the gambling regulatory public policy content for the 5 days. And then bookending and supporting that is a real mix of networking events. So you get the expert content from these diverse international experts, these expert practitioners in public policy and the regulatory craft. So you access that. You then have conversations and hear both from regulatory colleagues, but also other attendees, industry attendees, because only being in an echo chamber and hearing from regulatory colleagues isn't sufficient. You have to have conversations and hear perspectives and insights from industry. So we bring that together in a plenary discussion. So you get the expert content, you get the networking to build connections, to build relationships and expand your network. And you get to collaborate and participate in what should be conversation in the public square. What is good public policy in this space? Look, I think, I said at the outset, there's too few that really have a sophisticated understanding of the regulatory craft. That's both, unfortunately, in the public policy side, as well as it is in industry side. And one of our key objectives is to bolster that. It's to deepen individual understanding and capability. And by doing so, to deepen organisational understanding and capability around public policy, regulatory policy, and regulatory practice. And look, I guess finally, you join a reasonably distinguished alumni because you just can't access this course anywhere. And we have a ceiling. We only let 60 people in a year. So it's going to be a distinguished alumni. It's a prestigious course, and you just can't access this training anywhere else.
And of all the topics that are going to be considered over the 5 days, which do you think is, if not the most important, perhaps the most urgent at the current juncture?
Look, I think there's a few competing for that title, but we have assembled some really senior industry leaders to talk about AML, building resilience, hardening both operators, but industry, hardening industry against the risk of financial crime. So you don't get much heavier hitters than what we're bringing to this panel discussion in Sydney. Very high profile leaders from the major players are coming together for a moderated panel discussion about what is the status of industry? What are the next steps? How do you build resilience? How do you harden the environment against money laundering risks? And that's a very timely conversation given the ongoing inquiries from the AML regulator in Australia, as well as there's still a Royal Commission ongoing. And there's still other inquiries, particularly in New South Wales. Look, I think that's a fantastic panel, and we've got also some additional content around AML, but we're also hearing from Australia's AML regulator. We're hearing from the Financial Intelligence Unit. We've got a senior executive from AUSTRAC attending, so we're going to hear directly from the regulator. So look, there's a few topics that are competing for most critical, most important, most urgent. But AML's got to be up there, and we're hearing from some expert practitioners globally, but we're also hearing from the Australian regulator.
Certainly vital discussions to be had at the moment for, well, all over the world in many jurisdictions. It's obviously certainly a fantastic program for the 5 days. Is there anything you would like to add about the program itself, or what you're looking forward to personally?
Look, I'm looking forward to the program kicking off. I mean, we've had to reschedule it twice. COVID, like many in-person events, it's been torturous. It's been challenging. Whilst these inquiries have been going on in Australia, whilst this frenetic energy has been looking at the gambling sector, we've wanted to put on this training. There's never been a greater need for it. But unfortunately, like other in-person events, it's been foiled, and we've had to reschedule. So look, I'm excited, and I know, because we're doing this in partnership with the International Centre for Gaming Regulation at UNLV in Nevada. So it's Senet and it's UNLV in an ongoing partnership here to deliver this globally leading training. And I'm just excited. And I know Craig from UNLV is thrilled to be coming out and just to be delivering this course. We need to get it done, and we're going to get it done in March. And we really want some international attendance. It's a tall order because the borders are just being opened, but we are talking to some jurisdictions, and hopefully we will have some international regulators here. And we just want to deliver a fantastic program and really reset the conversation. The Royal Commissions have been a necessary intervention in the Australian sector. They've been a necessary intervention, but they have also skewed a little bit of the conversation, and it's time to reset that conversation. It's time to look forward. It's time to look forward to how do we build more capability? How do we realign that culture so it is aligned with a compliance orientation, continuous improvement? It's got this continuous improvement and innovative focus where there's leadership emerges in the sector, leadership striving to be exemplars in the sector. So we want to be a part of that, and we are really excited about it.
Brilliant. Well, it's very exciting to see the program finally getting underway, as you say, after a year of delays, and regulating the game, of course, kicking off next month in March. We'll be excited to see what kind of conversations develop out of that, and we of course hope to speak to you again, perhaps for a bit of a recap afterwards to discuss how, what kind of conversations emerged and what the reaction was like. So, Paul, thank you again for joining us on Focus Gaming News, and we hope to speak again soon.
Thanks, Joseph. Wonderful. Thank you for having me, and we hope to see Focus Gaming News on the ground in Sydney.
Brilliant. Thanks, Paul.